When my daughter-in-law told me to leave the house, I did not cry, I simply stood there, holding the edge of the door, feeling the weight of her words slowly settle inside my chest. It was strange, because in that moment, I thought I would break, but instead, I felt a quiet stillness, like when the last light of evening fades and you can hear your own heartbeat. I think it's better if you stay somewhere else for a while, she said.
Her voice was calm.
Almost too calm. As if she had practiced those words many times before saying them to me. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I did not want her to see the tears rising in my eyes. I did not want my son to come home and see me standing there, weak and helpless, like a burden no one wanted to carry anymore. For a moment, I looked around the house, my son's house, the house I had helped him build, slowly, brick by brick, dream by dream. I remembered the first day he got the keys. He hugged me so tightly that I almost lost my breath. He told me, "Amy, this is your home before it is mine." And yet now, here I stood, feeling like a stranger in a place where every corner still carried my memories. The sound of the kitchen clock echoed in the silence. Tick, tick, tick. Each second felt like it was peeling another layer from my heart. I wanted to say something. Maybe ask her why. Maybe tell her I had nowhere else to go. Maybe remind her of all the nights I stayed awake taking care of her and her children. But the words did not come out. Instead, I felt a soft, warm tear fall on my hand. I quickly wiped it away before she could see. "I understand," I told her, even though I did not, even though my heart was shaking inside me like a frightened child. She stepped back, letting me pass through the doorway. The afternoon light fell behind me, stretching my shadow long across the floor. I picked up my small bag, the same bag I used when I visited relatives, and walked out of the home I once believed would shelter me until my last breath. I closed the gate quietly behind me. One thought kept whispering inside my mind like a soft, painful echo. My son chose her over me. And that was the moment I realized my story had changed forever. I was not always a woman who walked away quietly with a small bag in her hand. There was a time when my home was filled with voices, laughter, and the sound of my son running behind me, calling, "Amy, wait for me." Those memories live inside me like soft lights in a dark room. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still see them clearly, as if they are happening right now. My son was my whole world. I raised him alone after his father passed away when he was still young. Life was not easy, but the bond between us was strong. He was gentle, always smiling, always trying to make me proud. People used to say, "Your son loves you more than his own life." And I believed that. I truly did. We lived in a small house, just the two of us. It was not perfect, but it was home. The walls were old, the paint a little cracked. The windows sometimes made a whistling sound when the wind was strong, but there was warmth there. There was love. Every morning, I would make him breakfast, a cup of tea, 2 eggs, and sometimes a little paratha if I had the strength. And every morning he would say, "Amy, no one cooks like you." And my heart would bloom like a flower. When he grew older, he started working. He would come home tired, but he always brought something small for me. A sweet, a scarf, sometimes just a little packet of biscuits. I told him not to waste money, but he always replied, "You took care of me all my life. Let me do something for you now." I used to laugh and shake my head, but inside I felt proud. I felt blessed. When he told me he wanted to get married, I was happy. I prayed he would find a partner who would bring light into his life. I wanted him to feel loved, to build the family he always dreamed of. When he introduced me to the girl he wanted to marry, his future wife, my future daughter-in-law, I remember thinking she was soft-spoken and polite. She smiled often, and her eyes looked kind. I welcomed her with an open heart. I told her, "You are like my own daughter now." She thanked me, and for a moment, I believed everything was going to be beautiful. Their wedding day was full of colors and noise. The lights outside the house shined like stars. Relatives laughed. Children ran around. Music played in the background. And I stood there watching my son start a new journey. His happiness was my happiness. I didn't feel alone. I thought, maybe this family of 2 will now become a family of 3. Maybe even more someday. After the wedding, they moved into the new house that my son had saved for many years to buy. He asked me to move in with them. "Amy, this house is not complete without you," he said. My heart felt full. I thought, maybe this is my time to rest, to be taken care of, to watch my son's family grow. In the beginning, everything was peaceful. Every morning, I would make tea for the three of us, and my daughter-in-law would help sometimes. Sometimes not, I didn't mind, and I wanted her to feel comfortable. I wanted her to feel free, not pressured. She called me Amy G with respect, and I felt hope. We would sit together at the dining table. MY's son would tell us stories from work. He would laugh, and she would laugh with him, and I would sit there watching them, smiling quietly, feeling grateful. I prayed every night. May their love stay strong. May my home stay peaceful. Months passed, and slowly, changes began to appear. Small changes, like tiny cracks on a wall that no one notices at first. My daughter-in-law started spending more time in her room. Sometimes she closed the door when my son left for work. Sometimes she avoided sitting with me in the living room. I thought she just needed space. I tried to give it to her. But then, she stopped helping in the kitchen. She began complaining about small things. The way I folded clothes, the way I cooked, the way I kept the shelves. Her tone was not rude, but it carried a coldness that made my heart sink a little each day. I tried to ignore it. I told myself, she is young. Maybe she is still adjusting. Maybe I should be patient. When my son came home, she behaved normally, smiling, talking, sitting next to him. I never told him what I felt. I didn't want to break his peace. I didn't want to make him choose sides. A mother never wants to put her child in that position. Then came the day when she told him she was expecting a child, my first grandchild. My hands trembled with joy, my eyes filled with tears. I prayed for her health, for the baby's safety, for the happiness of my home. But strangely, after that, she became even more distant. She said the smell of my cooking bothered her. She said she needed the house to be quieter. She said she felt uncomfortable when I watched over her too much. Did I listen? I stepped back even more. I walked slower, spoke softer, moved carefully around the house as if I did not belong there. When the baby was born, my world changed again. Holding that little child in my arms felt like holding a piece of heaven. My son cried when he saw me cradle his daughter. He whispered, "Amy, you are the happiest today, aren't you?" And I was, truly. But the distance between me and my daughter-in-law kept growing. She didn't like when I held the baby too long. She said I was old-fashioned. She said I interfered too much. Sometimes she didn't say anything at all, just looked at me with eyes that made me feel like an outsider. Still, I kept quiet. I kept loving them, all three. I kept praying for peace. I never imagined the day would come when she would ask me to leave, when her voice would be calm, steady, almost emotionless, while she asked me to step out of the home I once helped build, the home I believed would protect me in my old age. But life has a way of surprising us, sometimes with joy, sometimes with pain, and sometimes with lessons we never wanted to learn. Life inside the house changed slowly, like the way daylight fades without you realizing when the sun actually sets. It was not one big moment. It was many small ones, quiet, soft, almost invisible at first, but each one left a tiny mark on my heart. After my granddaughter was born, I tried to stay helpful. I cleaned the kitchen, that I washed clothes, that I made simple meals, that I stayed awake at night to take care of the baby if she cried. I did everything a mother would do, and everything a grandmother hopes to do. But soon the air changed. My daughter-in-law started keeping the baby in her room more often. She closed the door during the day. Sometimes I heard the baby crying, and I stood there outside the room, unsure if I should knock or stay away. I didn't want to upset her, so I stayed quiet. One afternoon, I asked gently, "Beta, can I hold the baby for a while?" She looked up from her phone and replied, "She is sleeping. Maybe later." Her voice was not harsh, but it carried a cold edge. I stepped back, nodded, and walked away slowly, trying not to feel hurt. The sound of the door closing behind me felt heavier than it should have. I tried to convince myself. She is a new mother. She is tired. I must understand. But understanding is not always easy when your heart feels left outside the door. Small tensions begin. The small moments continued. I remember one morning in the kitchen, I was making tea, the gentle sound of boiling water filling the silence. My daughter-in-law came in and stood behind me. I smiled and asked, "Should I make tea for you too?" She looked at the stove and said, "Actually, I don't like the way you make tea. It's too strong." Her words were simple, not loud, not insulting, but they felt like a small push, telling me I was doing things wrong. Even the things I had done my whole life. I nodded and stepped aside. "You can make your own. I will sit." She didn't say thank you. She just moved past me. Busy with her own thoughts, I sat at the dining table, watching her from a distance. She looked tired. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she felt I interfered. I kept trying to give her space, even if that meant shrinking myself smaller each day. MY's son starts changing to me. Son, he didn't notice much at first. When he came home from work, he was tired. He wanted peace, food, rest. He wanted the sound of his daughter's laughter to fill his evenings. He didn't see the small cracks forming between his mother and his wife. Sometimes he saw the tension but brushed it away. Amy, everything is fine, he would say. You worry too much. She respects you. She just needs time. I believed him. I tried to hold on to his words like a rope, but the rope kept slipping from my hands. One evening, I made dinner, simple lentils and rice. MY granddaughter was sleeping, and the house was finally quiet. MY son came home, hungry and smiling. He sat at the table, and I served him food. MY daughter-in-law sat across from him. She looked at the plate, then at him, and said quietly, I told you I don't like too much oil in the food. He looked confused. I think it's fine. She lowered her eyes. You don't have to say that. It's okay. And just like that, the evening changed. The warmth faded. A silence fell between us. MY's son looked at me with a soft apology in his eyes, but he said nothing, and that silence hurt more than any words could. Moments that slowly hurt. There were many moments like that. Small things, quiet things, things that felt like needles instead of knives. Once, I folded the baby's clothes and kept them in the cupboard. Later, I found them unfolded and placed again on the bed. MY daughter-in-law said, I like to do it my way. Another time, I arranged the kitchen shelves. I thought it would make things easier for her, but when she came in, she frowned and said, Why do you keep touching my things? Please just leave the kitchen to me. I stepped back immediately. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. She didn't reply. She just turned away. Each day, I felt like I was slowly becoming a guest in my own home, a quiet shadow that moved softly through the rooms so no one would feel disturbed. The first real confrontation one night. The baby cried loudly. MY daughter-in-law was asleep. MY son was still at work. I got up quietly and went to the baby's cradle. I picked her up gently, humming softly, trying to calm her. The baby relaxed in my arms, and I felt peace, the kind of peace only a grandmother understands. But a few minutes later, I heard footsteps, and my daughter-in-law woke up and came out of her room. Her face was tired, eyes half open. What are you doing? She asked. I froze a little, confused. I was just holding her. She was crying. You should have called me, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried frustration. She gets used to other people's hands. Then she won't sleep with me. I quickly tried to explain. I didn't want to disturb your rest. I was only trying to help. She took the baby from my arms, not roughly, but not gently either. Please don't do this again, she whispered. It makes things harder for me. I stepped back, my heart sinking. Of course, I said quietly. I went to my room and sat on the edge of my bed for the first time in that house. I cried alone, not loudly, just soft tears that fell quietly, like rain sliding down a window pane. Distance grows after that night. She became even more protective of the baby. I understood. She was a mother. Mothers have fears. Mothers worry. I respected that. But the distance between us grew. She stopped sitting with me in the mornings. She stopped talking unless necessary. She began to say things indirectly, through silence, through closed doors, through the distance in her eyes. My son noticed sometimes. He would ask, Amy, are you okay? I would smile and say, Yes, Beta. I am fine. But I wasn't fine. I was disappearing. One afternoon, something small but painful happened. The baby was crawling for the first time. I clapped my hands softly and said, Come to Dottie, my little one. My granddaughter giggled and moved toward me. But before she reached me, my daughter-in-law quickly lifted her and said, Not now. She just ate. She might fall. Her tone was normal, but the timing cut deep. It felt like she pulled the child not for safety, but to keep her away from me. I told myself not to think too much. But sometimes, a mother's heart understands things even without proof. The misunderstanding that changed everything. Then came the day that shifted the balance more than any other. I was in the living room, cutting vegetables, when I heard my daughter-in-law talking on the phone. Her voice was low but clear enough. I don't feel comfortable here. She interferes too much. I just want my own space. I can't live like this forever. I froze. My hand stopped working. The knife slipped from my fingers. Interferes too much? I barely spoke. I barely walked in the house. I tried to be small, quiet, respectful. Her words felt like someone squeezing my heart with both hands that I didn't want to listen. But when you are hurt, even the silence around you becomes louder. Later that evening, she didn't talk to me, and I didn't approach her. But something inside me broke softly, not loudly, not violently, just a quiet breaking, like a thread snapping. In the dark, my son caught in the middle. My son came home, and the tension in the house was thick. He noticed it immediately. Is everything okay? He asked his wife. She nodded slowly. Everything is fine. But her eyes said otherwise. He looked at me next. I smiled, a weak smile, but still a smile. Yes, Beta. Everything is fine. But mothers can hide pain from their children only for so long. Late that night, he came to my room. He sat beside me. Amy, tell me honestly, are you upset about something? I shook my head. No, Beta. I don't want to trouble you. He sighed. Sometimes I feel you, and she don't understand each other. I lowered my eyes. I try my best. I know, he whispered. I know you do. Then he said, I want both of you to be happy. Please try to make things easy. For me. His words were soft, but they pierced through me. I nodded. For you, Beta, I will try. He hugged me. I held him tightly, but something inside me felt weak, tired, defeated. The seed of separation over time. These little wounds grew, not all at once, slowly, softly, like a silent storm inside the walls of a home. My daughter-in-law grew distant. My son grew confused, and I grew smaller, quieter. Almost invisible. I never complained. I never argued. I never asked for anything. But deep inside, I felt a fear I had never felt before, a fear that one day I might not belong in my own son's life. And slowly that fear started becoming true. There is a moment in every story when the light fades and you understand that something inside you is about to change forever. For me, that moment did not come suddenly. It came quietly, like a cold wind entering through a small open window, unnoticed at first, but impossible to ignore once it touched the heart. The day everything fell apart started like any other day. The sun was soft. The house was calm. My granddaughter was playing on the floor, tapping her little hands on her wooden toys. Her laughter echoed gently, filling the room with a sweetness only small children bring. I was sitting nearby, sewing a button on one of my son's shirts. The simple sound of thread pulling through cloth felt peaceful. My daughter-in-law was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. She wasn't talking to me, but she wasn't upset either. Everything felt almost normal. But normal moments sometimes hide the storms waiting behind them. A simple mistake that opened a deep wound while sewing. I heard my granddaughter coughed, a small, soft cough, not alarming, just enough to catch my attention. I put down the needle and walked toward her. She had dropped a toy and was leaning over to pick it up, and for a moment, she seemed uneasy. Without thinking too much, I lifted her gently. Come to Dottie, I said softly. Let me see you, my little one. She laughed and held onto my dupatta with her tiny hands. Her smile filled me with warmth, but a few seconds later, my daughter-in-law entered the room and stopped. She looked at me holding the baby. Her expression tightened. Not anger, something colder. What are you doing? She asked. I smiled softly, trying to keep the mood light. She coughed a little. I was just checking her. She was fine, she said quickly. You worry too much. And she always gets too attached when you hold her like that. Her voice was quiet but sharp enough to cut into the air around us. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't mean anything wrong. She walked toward me and reached out her arms for the baby, and then came the one sentence that I will never forget, the sentence that cracked the foundation of everything I had built in that home. She said, very softly, sometimes I feel like you want to take her away from me. The words hit me like a wave of cold water. Take her away, me. The grandmother who loved her more than her own heartbeat. I felt my lips tremble. Why would you think that? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. She just took the baby and stepped aside. In that moment, I felt something break inside me. Not loudly, not violently, but quietly, like a thin thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. The conversation that was not meant for my ears that evening, after my son came home, I was in my room folding laundry. The door was slightly open. I could hear their voices from the living room. My daughter-in-law's voice was low but tense. I can't live like this, she said. I feel watched. I feel judged. I feel like I have no space. My son tried to calm her. What happened now? He asked softly. Everything, she replied. She always steps in. She always picks up the baby. She always moves things around the house. I feel like this is not my home. Her words were like tiny arrows being shot into my heart one by one. My son sighed. You know she doesn't mean harm. She just cares. She cares too much, she said. Sometimes her presence makes me uncomfortable. I need my own space. I need peace. There was silence, a long, heavy silence. Then she said the words that changed everything. Either she stays somewhere else or I will. My hands stopped moving. I felt the clothes fall from my fingers. I thought I must have heard wrong, but my son's silence confirmed it. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He didn't defend me. He just stayed quiet. And that silence said more than any words. The night of soft tears that night. I could not sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the world pressing on my chest. Memories of raising my son alone came back. The nights I spent praying for his health. The days I worked so he could study. The times I saved money for his clothes, his books, his future. I remembered carrying him when he was sick. I remembered feeding him with my own hands. I remembered all his first steps, all his tears, all his joys. Everything flashed before my eyes, and now my presence became a burden to him. My existence became a problem. My love became too much. I cried softly into my pillow so no one would hear. Not loud tears, just the quiet ones that slide down your cheeks without sound, the kind of tears that come when your soul feels tired. The morning that changed everything. The next morning, the house felt different, colder, quieter. My son avoided my eyes. My daughter-in-law acted normal, but her silence was louder than noise. I made tea for myself and sat on the balcony. The morning breeze touched my face gently. Birds chirped on the wires above. Life outside continued, while my life inside felt like it was breaking. My son finally came to me after breakfast. He sat beside me. He did not smile. He looked nervous, unsure. Amy, he began softly, can we talk? My heart tightened. I already knew what was coming. Yes, Beta, I said. Say what you need to say. He looked down at his hands. I know you love us. I know you love the baby. I know you do everything with good intentions. I nodded slowly. And he took a deep breath. Things are not peaceful. She feels uncomfortable. She feels stressed. She feels like she cannot manage the home her way. I stayed quiet. Then he said the words that felt like the world collapsing under my feet. Maybe it is better if you stay somewhere else for a while, just until things settle. I looked at him. MYSON, my baby. The child who once held my finger to walk, now telling me to leave the home I helped build. I felt something inside me go silent, completely silent, like a candle that had burned too long and finally flickered out. The moment I smiled instead of crying, I should have cried, any mother would, but I didn't. I looked at him with a soft smile, a smile that came not from happiness, but from deep, aching pain. I understand, I said quietly. Don't worry. I won't make things hard for you. He looked relieved, and that hurt even more. A son should not look relieved when his mother agrees to leave. But he did. He held my hand gently. Just for a short time, Amy. I promise. I nodded, but inside, I knew some distances don't heal. Some wounds don't close. Packing my little baggie, went to my room and looked around. It was not a big room, but it held all my memories. The shawl my son bought for me. The small blanket my granddaughter used. The old family photo on the table. I sat on the bed and folded a few clothes, a couple of scarves, my prayer mat, a small packet of medicines. That was all, a whole lifetime of sacrifice, reduced to one small bag. As I zipped the bag, I felt the world go quiet, completely quiet. My daughter-in-law stood near the kitchen doorway, watching me. She didn't say anything, not sorry, not thank you, not even goodbye, and maybe that was the answer I had been searching for all along. The last look at my granddaughter before leaving, I walked to the baby's cradle. My granddaughter was sleeping peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling with soft breaths. I touched her small hand, and she curled her fingers around mine. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I whispered, grow well, my little one.
Stay happy.
Stay safe. I kissed her forehead gently, and then I stepped back, letting go of her tiny hand, not knowing when I would hold it again. The door that closed softly, my son walked me to the door. He carried my small bag. He looked guilty, but he did not stop me. He hugged me, and I hugged him back. For a moment, I held him tighter than I had in years. He whispered, "I love you, Amy." I smiled softly. "I love you too, Beta." Then I let go, and I took my bag. I stepped out of the house. The door closed behind me. Not loudly, not harshly, just a soft click, but that small sound echoed like thunder inside my heart, because I knew when that door closed, something inside me closed too, something that might never open the same way again. When I finally reached my room that night, after leaving my son's house, I sat down on the edge of the bed and felt a long silence fall over me. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, yet strangely comforting. Nothing moved in the room, not even a curtain. Not a sound came from outside. It was as if the world wanted me to sit with my thoughts a little longer. For the first time in many days, I allowed myself to breathe slowly. My hands were shaking, my heart felt bruised, but somewhere deep inside, there was also a sense of peace trying to grow that I whispered to myself, everything changes, even love. But maybe time can change it again. I did not sleep that night. I kept thinking of my son. I thought about the moment he stood beside his wife. I thought about the fear in his eyes, the confusion, the helplessness. I thought about how love sometimes makes people weak, not because they stop caring, but because they are torn between two worlds, a mother's world and a partner's world. Both worlds ask for loyalty. Both ask to be chosen, and he could choose only one. I understood that now. In the next morning's light, my room looked different. The sunlight fell gently on the floor. It made me think of a new beginning, even though nothing had changed outside. But something inside me had shifted just a little that I stood up and opened the window. A soft breeze touched my face. It felt kind, almost like a warm hand on my cheek. I closed my eyes and allowed myself to feel it. For a few seconds, I felt something I had forgotten for a long time. Hope. Later that morning, I made tea for myself. Just one cup. It felt strange. I had spent years making tea for my son. 2 cups every morning, one strong for him and one lighter for myself. Today there was only 1 cup on the table that I held the cup in both hands and said softly, "Life keeps teaching us lessons, even when we are tired of learning." The next few days passed slowly. I settled into a quiet routine. I cleaned my room. I folded my clothes. I made simple meals. I listened to the soft ticking of the clock on the wall. There was peace, but a heavy kind of peace. Yet day by day, the heaviness softened a little. That I did not call my son, that I did not message him, that I did not ask anyone about him, not because I was angry, not because I wanted to punish him, but because I understood something important. Love sometimes needs space to grow again, that if I tried to hold him tightly, he might pull away further. If I stepped back, maybe he would find his way back to me, and if he didn't, I would learn to live with that too. Around the 4th day, something unexpected happened. I was sitting near the window in the late afternoon. The sky was quiet. A soft gray color spread across it, as if clouds were trying to hide their tears. I had just finished reading a small storybook someone gifted me years ago. Just then, my phone vibrated. The sound startled me because it had been silent for days. My heart suddenly beat faster. For a moment, I did not want to look at the screen. I was afraid it would be some random message, not the one I was secretly wishing for. But then I slowly picked up the phone and turned it over. My breath caught in my throat. IT was a message from my SO, and IT said only 5 words. "Amy, are you okay now?" It was simple, IT was small. But to me, those 5 words felt like someone had opened a window in a dark room. My eyes filled with tears. But this time, these tears were different. They were soft. They were warm. They were healing. That I did not reply immediately. Not to make him worry, but because I wanted to answer with clarity, not with pain. After a few minutes, I typed, "I am okay. I hope you are too." He replied back in just a few seconds, "Amy, I miss you." I felt something break inside me, and something heal at the same time. I placed my hand on my heart and whispered, "I miss you too, my child." But I did not send those words, not yet. Instead, I wrote, "Take care of yourself. I am always praying for you." I pressed send with a steady hand. That message was the beginning of something gentle, not sudden forgiveness, not complete healing, just a small path opening between us again. And the following days, my son messaged me every evening, sometimes 1 line, sometimes a small voice note, sometimes just a simple, "Amy, have you eaten?" And slowly, very slowly, the wall between us began to thin. He did not talk about his wife. I did not ask. I did not want to pull pain out of him. I wanted him to come to me with his heart, not with explanations. One evening, he sent a voice message. His voice was low, trembling a little. Amy, I know I hurt you. I never wanted to. Please just give me some time. I sat quietly, listening to his words again and again. Then I replied, You are my son. Time is yours. My heart is yours. Whenever you walk toward me, I will be here. He did not reply that night, but I felt he needed those words more than anything else. Days turned into a week turned into two, that life settled into a new rhythm, a quiet one, but a hopeful one. One afternoon, I decided to step outside for a little walk. I needed fresh air. I needed to feel life moving around me, not just inside my room. The sky was bright and the wind gentle. As I walked slowly down the street, I passed children playing, neighbors talking, a small shopkeeper arranging vegetables. Everything felt strangely normal. Life had not stopped, even though mine had shaken. That thought comforted me. When I returned home, I saw something unexpected sitting at my door. A small bag, a familiar one. My heart started racing. I picked it up slowly. I opened it carefully. Inside was a container of biryani, a packet of sweets, and a simple note written in slightly messy handwriting. Amy, I came to see you. You were not home. I will come again. I love you. Your Sony sat down right there on the floor, holding the note tightly. A mother never forgets the weight of her child's handwriting. It carries warmth. It carries memories. It carries love. I pressed the note to my heart. Thank you, I whispered. The next evening, there was a soft knock on my door. I knew the rhythm of that knock. It was the same rhythm he used when he was a little boy coming home from school. 2 slow taps, then a pause. My hands trembled as I reached for the door handle. When I slowly opened it, he was standing there, my son. Eyes lowered, shoulders slightly shaking, breathing unsteady, as if he had run a long emotional distance just to stand in front of me. He did not speak. I did not speak. For a moment, silence was the only language between us. Then he lifted his eyes. There were tears in them. He whispered, Amy, can I come inside? I moved aside gently. Of course, I said in a soft voice. He stepped in, but instead of walking into the room, he stopped in front of me and suddenly wrapped his arms around me tightly. His head fell on my shoulder. Amy, I am sorry. I am so sorry. His voice broke. He cried like he hadn't cried in years. I placed my hand on his back, slowly, gently. I did not tell him to stop. I did not tell him to be strong. I just held him. A mother's arms do not ask questions. They simply accept. After a long time, he stepped back and wiped his face. I didn't choose her over you, he said softly. I was just afraid of losing the peace in my home. I thought staying silent would protect everyone. I didn't know it would hurt you so deeply. I nodded slowly. I understand, I replied. Love makes us do difficult things. But you never lose me. Not even for a moment. He looked down again. Amy, I don't know how to fix everything. You don't have to fix everything, I said. You just have to stay connected. That is enough. He nodded gently. After a few moments, he said, Can I come again tomorrow? I smiled softly. I will be waiting. From that day, he started visiting me regularly, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for an hour. Sometimes he just sat quietly, drinking tea with me, not saying much. And that silence felt peaceful. His wife never came with him. He never mentioned her. I never asked. Healing does not happen by forcing people into the same room. Healing begins with the heart, not with physical presence. Day by day, our relationship grew softer, warmer, safer again. Not the same as before, but sometimes not same can still be beautiful. One evening, he brought me fruits. Another day, he cleaned a leaking tap in my kitchen. One afternoon, he spent an hour fixing my old cupboard. He did these things quietly, without saying words like, sorry again. His actions became his apology, and I accepted each one gently. A few weeks later, he finally said something I had been silently waiting for. Amy, she wants to talk to you. Only if you want. I looked at him calmly. I will talk when the time is right, I said. But right now, let us heal first. He nodded, understanding, and for the first time in a long time, his smile reached his eyes. The resolution was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was simple. It was slow. It was soft. Healing often looks like that. A message. A visit, a cup of tea, a repaired tap, a warm silence, little things becoming big things that I did not get everything back, but I got my son back, not through force, not through anger, not through blame, but through patience and love and quiet understanding, and sometimes that is more than enough. The weeks that followed felt like gentle waves washing over the shore. Nothing happened suddenly. Nothing happened loudly. Everything changed in small, steady ways, like the quiet movement of time itself. My son continued to visit me, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with a small smile, sometimes with nothing but his quiet presence. And even that felt like a blessing. I learned to appreciate those moments without expecting more, without forcing emotions, without asking questions that might create new wounds. And slowly, my heart learned something important. Love heals best when it is patient. One evening, I was sitting near my window again. The sky was soft orange, the kind that looks like someone carefully brushed color across it. Birds were flying home. A gentle breeze was moving through the trees. Everything felt calm. My son arrived a little later than usual that day. He sat down quietly in the chair across from me. He looked tired but peaceful. Amy, he said very softly, I am trying my best. I want you to know that. I smiled gently. I know, I replied. And your best is enough. He nodded, and for the first time since everything happened, he looked truly relieved, as if he finally believed he wasn't being judged. After a few moments of silence, he said something that surprised me. Amy, I want to tell you something that I think she is also trying. She doesn't know how to face you, but she knows she hurt you. I listened quietly. There was no anger in me, just a soft acceptance of life's imperfections. People make mistakes, I said, sometimes out of fear, sometimes out of immaturity, sometimes out of misunderstanding. What matters is what they learn afterward. He looked at me with gentle eyes, as if my words had lifted weight off his shoulders. I continued, when the time is right, I will speak to her. Not to complain, not to reopen old wounds, but to begin again softly. He nodded gratefully. Thank you, Amy. I touched his hand lightly. Life is long, my child. We cannot carry every hurt with us. It becomes too heavy. That night, after he left, I sat alone in the quiet room again, the same room where I had cried, prayed, and slowly healed. But tonight, the silence felt different, not heavy, not painful, not empty. It felt peaceful. It felt like forgiveness. It felt like a soft ending to a hard chapter. I thought back to the moment my daughter-in-law asked me to leave her home. I remembered the coldness in that moment. I remembered my quiet pain. I remembered the long walk back to my room, the loneliness, the ache of being unwanted. But now, after everything that happened, that moment no longer felt like the end of my story. It felt like the beginning of a different kind of understanding, the kind that makes a person wiser, calmer, and softer inside. Sometimes life breaks us, not to destroy us, but to open our hearts in new ways. The next morning, I walked outside to take in the fresh air. A small child from the neighborhood waved at me. A bird was singing in a nearby tree. A gentle beam of sunlight fell across my path. For a long time, I stood still, watching the light, and I realized something simple, something powerful. Pain does not stay forever, but the lessons it leaves behind stay with us, quietly guiding our hearts. I went back inside and made myself tea. As the steam rose from the cup, I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I felt gratitude, not for the hurt, but for the growth that followed it. I whispered to myself, love is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, sometimes it is delayed, but it always finds a way. And this is what I learned, a lesson I hold in my heart gently. In family, nobody truly wins by fighting. We win by understanding. We win by waiting. We win by loving, even when it hurts. If my son ever chooses to bring his wife to meet me again, I will welcome her with calmness, not bitterness. I will speak with kindness, not pride. I will start fresh, not from the wound, but from the hope that we can all grow. Because life is too short for long distances in the heart, and love is too precious to lose. Over one difficult moment, I reached the end of the story. My voice is quiet, not out of sadness, but out of peace. This is not the ending of my relationship with my son. This is just the ending of one painful chapter, and the beginning of a gentler one. I forgive, I breathe, I move forward. Not because I am weak, but because love is stronger than hurt. And if anyone listening to this story is also holding pain in their heart, I hope you remember. The heart breaks so it can open wider. The soul cries so it can learn compassion, and love returns when we make space for it.